This meeting is being recorded.
What's going on, guys? It's the Bigs Podcast, episode number 72, part 3. Now, sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes you make blunders. Listen, we have errors as a category. This would be an error on us, guys. We covered the wrong matchup in part 2, so we need to cover ourselves and take care of part 3. And staying up late with me again, Ben Nisman, the commissioner. Thank you once again for being with me, buddy.
It's a pleasure as always, Joe. It's 1:15 in the morning, but we're thinking about baseball. We want to talk about baseball. We have a lot to discuss in this beautiful league. And one of our viewers actually told me, hey, am I crazy or did I hear the same matchup covered twice? I said, no, you're not crazy. And it's actually a name that would surprise you, Joe. So we know there are people listening. We want to bring them everything, all the content they want to hear. So we got more that we want to break down. A little surprise in store, but Joe, please lead it off for us, my friend.
Let's get going, boys. Now, this is going to be a quick review here of the matchup that we missed. It is, in fact, James McCloskey taking on Mike Sherman. Now, it's a 13-8 win for Mike here. And on Sunday, James had a 4-run lead, and Mike flipped that. Doubles were tied, and Mike won that. Stolen bases were tied, and Mike blew that away. Errors were tied, and he took one. And walks given up by a pitcher, Mike had a 1-walk lead, and James was able to flip that one. Close categories overall, James wins by the error, the save, and the walk given up. Sherman wins by 2 runs, the triple, and the loss. They tied in nothing. On the bench for McCloskey this week, Benjamin, it is a 6 for 28.
I can do that. 227.
214. It's 5 runs, 2 doubles, 3 RBIs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, and an error. None of it plays. The 5 runs, he'd have to be perfect in order to get in, and I'm not going to nitpick that this early in the season already. His moves this week. He adds Drew Smyly, 5 2/3, a walk, 7 strikeouts, 1.80 ERA, and an 0.60 whip. Then the next day, drops Mitch Garver and Drew Smyly for Edward Cabrera, 5 innings, a walk, 4 strikeouts, a 3.60 ERA, and a 1.60 whip. Drops Matt Duffy, drops Edward Cabrera for JT Chargois. Added Bailey Falter, 4 2/3, a loss, a walk, 4 strikeouts, 9.64, and a 1.93. He drops Will Brennan and added Donovan Solano, 2 for 5, a run, 2 doubles, an RBI, and a strikeout. Added Akil Baddoo, 0 for 2 with a run and 2 walks, and added Stuart Fairchild, 1 for 3 with 2 runs. Those 3 ads and the Bailey Falter ad were all on the same day on the short Thursday. It ends up being a 3 for 10 with 3 runs, 2 doubles, 2 walks, an RBI, and a strikeout. Pretty good day by Mr. McCloskey there. The next day, he drops Falter, Coleman, and Baddoo, picks up Kyle Nelson for a relief appearance, adds Madison Bumgarner, who was awful, and then drops Madison Bumgarner and Stuart Fairchild, adds Jason Foley, who apparently might be getting some save ops in Detroit now, an inning, a walk, 2 strikeouts, a 1 whip, and a relief appearance. And I say that he's getting save opportunities. He got the save today, which is Tuesday. So interesting that he's still there. He finished out the week dropping Foley and Baddoo. His MVP this week, we are going to talk about Sean Murphy. I know it chaps Frank that this guy didn't end up on his team, and maybe this is one of the reasons why. A 391 average, a 500 on base, 6 runs, 6 doubles, 3 homers, 11 RBIs, 4 walks, 10 strikeouts, and an error. The least valuable player, and we did see this a couple of times last year, if you'll remember, Ben, Shohei Ohtani does go really cold for like week to 10 days at a time. This week, a 211, a 286 on base, 2 runs, an RBI, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. It's just not what you want to see out of the guy that you drafted second overall.
Right. And to an extent, what you don't expect from Ohtani.
Yeah. Shout out to Ryan Mountcastle, who's been unreal. He did have 4 homers and 13 RBIs, but only hit 188. So I'm not going to. Yeah.
Basically, he has only 4 hits, probably.
Probably. The Cy Young this week goes to Kenley Jansen. 2 clean saves with 3 strikeouts and an 050 whip. And the Cy Young is the aforementioned Dylan Coleman, who got dropped. He showed up through 2 outs, 4 walks, a strikeout, an 81 and 9 whip, and was off of the team. For Sherman, who won the week, Benji, this is a good one. 12 for 50 on his bench.
So 236.
It's a 240. 9 runs, 2 doubles, 3 homers, 7 RBIs, a steal, 7 walks, 14 strikeouts, and 2 errors. Listen, McCloskey put up 12 homers and 55 RBIs this week. So even if Mike Sherman got those 3 homers and 7 RBIs in, he still loses by 3 and 15 respectively.
Yeah. The fact that he actually won runs by 2 is so impressive when you look at the offensive numbers from James.
Yeah. And conversely, we saw James playing the light days and getting stuff into his lineup and really maxing out the counting stats that he could. Mike Sherman didn't make a move this week. Did not make a move at all. So proof positive you can win without doing a whole lot. Bobby Witt Jr. is the MVP this week. 444 with a 464. 6 runs, 2 doubles, the triple that won the category, 2 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, a walk, 4 strikeouts, and an error. The least valuable hitter is Byron Buxton, 095 with a 208 on base, 3 runs, a homer, and 2 RBIs, 3 walks, but 14 strikeouts. Yikes.
Yeah. I think you should probably give a shout out here to Jorge Mateo with his 6 runs, 3 doubles, a homer, 7 RBI, 3 swiped bags, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, and then are also, but just like Bobby Witt, that eventually that lost in the category, but still a 429 average, a 462 on base, and Mike won both of those categories with a very impressive 298 average, 357 OBP for the whole darn week.
And the 13 steals is what's just absolutely nightmarish to think about. You know, he put up 4 from Witt, 3 from Mateo, 2 from Acuna, 3 from Jeremy Pena. Like, this team's pretty loaded offensively.
Yeah. They just all have to be clicking at the same time. And, you know, we've seen these guys go through slumps. So you wonder how the pieces work together, because a lot of this is just timing. You know, they all got to just hit when you need them to against that particular opponent. Right? Like sometimes your opponent is batting 205 going into Friday, and all you need to do is bat close to 220 and hold it together until Sunday. So, like I said, a lot of it is just timing. And in this case, they were both basically hitting the shit out of the ball. And for James, it's just unfortunate that he walked into a guy that was just singling him to death, basically.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Sunday here in a moment after I talk about the Cy Young here. You would think I would give it to the other side of Shohei Ohtani, given that it was 7 innings and a win. But these 5 walks when he loses the category by 1 really hurts. Really hurts. So I have to give it to Barrios for the 5 innings, the win, and the 6 strikeouts with a 180 and an 080. The Cy Young is Kodai Senga, 4 2/3, 2 bombs, 4 walks, 7 strikeouts, a 771 and a 236. At the end of the day, though, he pitched really well. So it's not to take anything away from how Mike pitched. But there's a weird thing about what McCloskey did here. 50 innings, a 4.65 ERA. That's not great, but he only gave up 1 bomb.
So
bizarre. Yeah. So bizarre. Now, as for Sunday, I talked about how many of these categories that Mike Sherman actually was able to flip on Sunday. Let's take a look at what he did. So on Sunday, we get a 250. If we can get to it. He actually had 5 steals on the Sunday. 3 out of Pena, one out of Acuna, one out of a Mateo, with a 250, a 306, 10 strikeouts, but the 4 doubles plays, the 7 runs plays. But those 5 steals is what's amazing.
Yeah. And not to mention like a 250, like a perfect quarter as far as the batting average goes. He held third just enough because batting average and OBP, they were gettable going into Sunday. He just needed to not be terrible, and he did enough here.
The unfortunate part of it is while that's happening, James McCloskey 129 with a 156, a run, an RBI, a walk, and 10 big punch outs. Rough. Now, where do we see these gentlemen going from here, Benji?
Yeah. So as far as Mike Sherman goes, he'll go as far as he takes his team. And I think if he stands put the way he's done in previous seasons, it's going to be hard to compete because we just have a lot more active managers than we do not. The guys that only make, the 0 to 3 ads a week. Like, it's just not going to happen, especially as the weeks progress. So
Right.
It's a nice roster, and I like it, and I think it can compete. But Sherman is still going to have to play day to day, and he's going to surprise you with that. Wait a minute, he made ads at 5 a.m. on Wednesday, and those are going to happen, and then you play against them how you need to. But in general, I think that Sherman is still going to be the same manager day to day that he usually is, and I think it's going to be tough to compete. But of course, he's going to be a pain in the ass to play against, as we've experienced. I mean, he's a seasoned vet, and there's a reason why he was able to take down a very, very good manager like McCloskey. I mean, McCloskey on Monday, 17 RBI.
Yeah.
I mean, right off the bat, what the hell are you supposed to do about that? You say, okay, that stat is done, and you got to focus elsewhere. And somehow, I mean, it just looked so bleak after Monday. And that's what's amazing about the bigs. You got to win in 7. You got to play all 7 days. You can't get too high on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. It all comes down to Sunday. And it did in this case. Everything could have gone awry, but Mike's team was better technically on Sunday than McCloskey's, and the results show.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we have seen McCloskey put up some ridiculous things so far this season. He had a really, really nice day against you in week 1. He has this good week, this awesome Monday, 12 bombs and 55 RBIs. We know that this guy's capable of putting a good team together. Runs into a really good Sunday to kind of sink his battleship here.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and transition forward here, because what we are surprising you guys with here is the opportunity for us to take a look at what has already happened 2 days in.
Right.
And
before we even get to that, Joe, because I just wanted to finish your question on where we see these 2 guys going. And but I talked about one. The other guy is McCloskey. And he really has impressed me as far, he took me out in week 1. I had a hard time beating him anyway, but he played harder than I anticipated in that 11-day matchup. He really, really worked hard through the 11 days, made more ads than I expected, made more benchings than I expected. I kind of expected him to play his guys out, and he wouldn't. And, so between these 2 guys, I'm looking at McCloskey and I'm looking at his roster and the explosiveness and the potential of all these guys, at least so far. And this could be a very, very dangerous team that it could take these kinds of losses and even smaller ones like 1180, 1280. But then Kabashka won a 14-7 and then, a 14-6, and he's right back up to the top, and he's just jumping in the standings, falling a little bit, jumping a little higher. And we've seen that with McCloskey. We saw it in 2019. So this is an impressive guy. He's always drafted well, even though we are always scratching our head like, this guy here, Gene Segura, I don't know, but don't question the man. None of us have a crystal ball, and he put this team together, and I don't want to face him in 14 weeks, but I gotta.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have to face him twice this year. Lebo's going to have to face him twice this year. And that's what we're going to spin forward here, guys. We are going to start breaking down and taking a look and predicting what will happen here in week 3. If we have a screw up somewhere future, we might do this again, but who knows? Yeah. Now, to transition forward, let's start with that matchup between James McCloskey and Brian. What are you seeing already?
Well, obviously, it's going in one direction right now for each guy, and unfortunately for Brian, it's in the opposite direction of James. And James is taking off early. It's going to be hard already to climb back here, but it's still early. There's still plenty of gettable stats. So he's just got to try to win Wednesday, and if he wins Wednesday, then maybe he can afford to lose Thursday, but try to win the day tomorrow. And if you can't, try to win Thursday. And if you can't do that, maybe just, if you can't win 2 out of 3 in the weekend, grab 1 and then salvage as much as you can on Sunday, because right now this is just a locomotive that's working for McCloskey.
This is a machine, and today was one of those beautiful days you see once a couple of times a year. This man threw the most ridiculous day I've seen in quite a while. 23 2/3 innings, 3 wins, a save, 4 walks, 30 strikeouts, an 0.38 ERA, and 0.72 WHIP with 5 relief appearances. Yo.
Yeah. It's really, really tough to compete against that. Of course, the next day or the day after, he might have a couple of pitchers, and he pitches with both of them, and they both implode, and then you're right back in the middle. So, yeah, it's
we're also just sort of dismissing the offensive day, which was 4 bombs, 10 RBIs, and 9 runs. Like, he's hitting it all over the place right now.
I know. Yeah, and these, again, like a 341 on base, a 275 average. Like, this is just, these are competable stats. Like, you can, it's really, really tough. Like, you have to keep on putting up days that you're plus 225 just to hang in there right now.
Yeah. So here's the question: do you want to put a score on it? Do you want to make a prediction?
Yeah, no, I don't mind doing that at all.
All right, what do you got this week for James against Brian?
Well, I do think that Brian is going to close this gap for sure. And I do think that McCloskey will cool down a little bit. Brian's a great player by the score. He likes playing to the score. And I think when comes Sunday, he's going to do whatever he can to just grab 1 or 2, just so he salvages it. So give me 13-8, no tied stats for McCloskey.
I was gonna go that way. I was gonna go. I think 13 is a safe bet for McCloskey this week, but I think I'm gonna go a little bit lower with Brian, and not because I think it's going to be one of those cases where McCloskey's tying things and taking things away from Brian, but I think those ties are actually going to start pulling away from McCloskey, right? So we see something like a 13-6, something in that general area. 13-6, I'll even go 13-7, but I think there's going to be a couple of ties that make this a little bit further away than you would like, but we're going to look at it as it being a salvage. Let's move on to another matchup here. I'm just going to pick around. Oh, let's start with the guy who's in first place. His name is Matt Losey. Get the camera, guys. It's 2 weeks in a row this guy's been at the top. Benji, what have you seen so far from I Smell Sex and Yandy versus the X-Men?
Well, I noticed that on Monday, there was obviously a light lineup for Losey, and did have an opportunity to get a guy in because Mike Trout had the day off. And it did surprise me that the Red Sox fan in the league didn't check to see what was going on in his game. The Red Sox did have the early game. It was an unusual 11 a.m. start, but Mike Trout sitting, didn't make that play. Could have been anybody. Now, I personally would have played low in that case. I know it sounds like, oh, yeah, you would have played the guy that hit the bomb. Yes, because Joe has Yandy Diaz, and I would have played off of that. So Who knows what he would have done, but either he does get him in or he does get, say, a Suzuki in, which was a 3 for 5 with the run and an RBI and 2 strikeouts. So already those are stats that if they end up becoming that close on Sunday, I think Joe is going to take them. This is definitely going to be a double up. I do believe it could be a schooling. And as the week gets further, Joe knows how to play to the score the best, one of the best at it. And it's certainly going to be a double up. I'm going to say it's even going to be worse than that. Give me 14-6 in favor of Joe Schubert.
Thank you. I love the confidence. I hope I can prove you right. I'm going to put a little respect on Matt Losey and put a little respect on Matt Losey's team that he's put together here in the early going. Do I think I get the win? Of course I do. I believe in myself every single week, and I think I'm going to win it fairly handily, but I'll go so far as to say he gets like 3 or 4 back. We'll go 12-7 here. We'll go 12-7. Let's grab another matchup here, and we're going to go to, let's go to Frank and Jason. This is going to be a fun one. What do you see so far?
Well, I'm seeing 2 very, very determined managers. Frank probably considers this a must-win at this point because he wants to get out of the basement so badly. Got pretty much everything in play. Nice 5 double lead from Frank, but we know how that goes. Like Mike Haber said in in part 1, you think you have something locked up, and then you know what happens on the weekend. So everything seems basic.
If I'm Frank, I'm scared to death of Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm so scared that this is going to be the 3rd week in a row, and it's going to be to Jason, and he's already 13 under. I know it's so early, but if if this somehow falls to 15 to 20 under to start the season, it's going to start snowballing, and I don't want that for him. We want so badly for this team to do well, and so far it's holding its own. Right now we're doing okay.
I'm sure. I mean, all these stats, firstly, 16 hits versus 19, 16 for 73 versus 19 for 60. Obviously, Frank needs to catch up a little bit in these at-bats, and we'll see. These will definitely change and get closer. Mm-hmm. But, it's hard for me to bet against Jason right now. He's such a hot manager, and he plays the score. Again, another one that plays the score so beautifully, and it's just hard for me to bet against him right now. I think it'll be close. Mm-hmm. I've got something like an 11-9 in favor of Jason. But, I know that Frank is probably just going to do everything he freaking can to get every damn stat. And I'm worried for him that a loss sets him in a mental kind of a snowball, Joe, because like you said, it is so early, but if he does go 20 down, it still doesn't matter with 19 matchups to go. He just can't. And I realize being 20 under in this league, it's tough just because everyone is competing. Like everyone is a tough team. No one is an easy out.
And you've got 9 guys you've got to jump to get to the playoffs. Like when you're in that basement, it's a ladder, and you got to go up every rung of that ladder to get there. And there are no easy outs here. So the sooner Frank can get out of that spot and it not be a case where we start to either see like a separation of tiers like we do in some seasons, or a team just takes off and owns things, and then there's a bunch of dudes fighting for the rest. We've seen a lot of ways that teams start to separate, and it's going to start happening. For me this week, Frank, listen, I'm going to call this one now as the tie of the week. But for the sake of this show, go get yourself your 10-9 win this week, Frank. We will take a look at the next matchup here. What do we got?
I don't even know if that was a prediction, but okay. We'll say you tied and you want him to win 10-9.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be the matchup that goes to the tie, but I'll believe Frank could win 10-9. Okay. Benji, it's a tale as old as time. It's one that started in 2003. It actually probably started December of 1984 when you came into the world. Here we are.
But it's okay.
83. Yes, 83. Right, a couple of months before me.
Okay. I wish you took away a year from me, but thank you.
It's the rivalry, man, and it's one of those ones that you always say, like you said it last night. This is one of those. All right, I have Ari this week. I can relax for a minute. How are you feeling 2 days in?
Fine. Obviously a bit frustrated that he's pitching brilliantly because I felt like I was doing pretty well. But this is always going to be a battle. Ari beat me last year on Father's Day. I believe the final was 12-9. He was able to take average when I was leaving stuff on the bench all week. And usually I get it in some way. Either I beat him like a double up, like a 14-7, or I find a way to just beat him by a little. But I usually get Ari. So even though I lost last year and he's fighting better than he has in a while, I mean, I don't think anyone really expected him to be a playoff team last year, knowing his strategy without a bullpen, basically. But look what he did last year. He grabbed that sixth spot. He was amazing us every week. And we're like, guys like Bobby's like, hey, Bumpin' Ugglas is just not the same manager anymore. I'm like, I know. Like, everyone is just like, why is Ari kicking all of our asses? And he didn't. He got into the playoffs. And even though he was a quick out in the first round, he still now has cemented himself. It's like, playing Ari this week. Like, it's not an easy one. I know that I can strategize very differently. I don't really have to play all 12 ads. Like, more than likely will not. But even still, it's just you're sweating every day because you're like, when is this offense going to murder me? And it's a great offense, between having Judge and freaking Bo Bichette. It's just, right there, like those two guys can carry you for an entire week. But as long as those guys are cool, Teoscar doesn't hit 3 bombs, I should be able to hang in with him offensively. And my pitching has been my bugaboo. Been good so far, but we're a little more than a quarter away to the 42. So I'm not going to say that I win. I'll say that I take that 10-9 loss, actually. But I'm going to keep it close. I don't think I'm going to get blown
out. I have it the other way. I'll go 11-9 you winning this one. Just on the simple fact that Ari did just take a pretty big hit to his pitching staff and losing Jeffrey Springs for the year. So I think there's something to be said about, okay, now I have to re-strategize, figure out what that roster spot's going to be. And when you make so few moves as Ari does, that decision-making can pretty much be all you do that day, and you're losing whatever it is that you normally put into it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'll give you the 11-9 win here. I don't think either one of you get crushed here. But I do look forward to seeing how Ari gets that new open roster spot utilized.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby Russo and Costas. What do you got there, Benji?
Wow, how do you bet against Bobby Russo at this point? I mean, the guy is just feeling himself right now. Both guys are pitching really solidly, even though Costas only throwing a 5 1/3, but it's going to be tough. I mean, Bobby already is nearly half to the minimum, and he's got a .95 ERA, a .63 WHIP. I mean, I don't know. Bobby's been playing the score beautifully. He's been hitting the cover off the ball for the most part. He's a little cold right now. We got a 271 average to a 197 in favor of Costas, but it's 2 out of 7 days. So everything is going to change in that regard. It's going to be close. Give me 11-7 in favor of Bobby.
Getting 3 ties this week in this matchup. I think I'm with you on this is going to be the low score matchup. I feel like it's going to be something like 9-8, 9-7, like something really, really small, right? Yeah. So, but I think I'm actually going to swing this one in Costas' favor because he hasn't thrown any innings yet. And he has 59 at bats so far, but 5 bombs. So I'm not going to believe that his offense is going to completely tank. It depends on how he manages. It is very dependent upon how he manages this offense this week. He can win a lot of
yeah.
stats this week offensively with this start
Mm.
if he gets it correct.
Right. No, you're right. It really does come down to his magic. He can manage himself into a win for sure. He can do that, but it's going to be very, very tough. And yes, I agree with you that he might not cool down that much, but Bobby, I think, will heat up quite a bit.
Yes.
I think for me, that's expected to happen. And by Sunday, it's going to be very close. But okay, we see it in different directions. I like that.
Yeah, this buffer that Costas has, at least in batting average and maybe in strikeouts, and especially in home runs. That's the buffer that you have to maintain when Bobby heats up this week. Again, that will come down to how he manages. We've seen that the roster is not exactly constructed fluidly, that he has a nice, even group. Now, he does get it right. He got it right today for sure. If he continues that, I think he wins this. And I hope that he does. I'll give him we'll call it a 10-8. We'll call it a 10-8. Let's see. Next matchup we've got here, Christian Wood and Mike Sherman.
Yeah. I think this one's going to be close, actually. I realize when you look at it right now, 15-6, it looks ugly. But every stat for Christian on the pitching side, he's winning with, actually 30 innings. It's pretty solid right now, 356 over those 30. So that's good. But again, I got to see Sherman pitch a lot more. And Sherman, if he has to win innings pitched and strikeouts, he'll go for that. This is going to come down to how hard these guys work, especially over the weekend. We've been seeing more activity from Christian than Sherman so far over these first 2.5 matchups. So I got it, in this case, give it to Christian because I think he's going to grind it out over the weekend, but I think it'll be fairly close. I'll go 11-8 in favor of Christian.
Christian has been ice cold to start this season. I'm actually thinking this is going to be fairly close to this score as the finish. I think Christian's going to get right here and blow out Mike Haber for much the same reason you just said. We have seen a lot more activity from Christian over the last 2 weeks. Mike Sherman won last week without making a move. His team has been really hot. His team is still pretty hot, putting up 4 homers and 13 RBIs. Does it last the rest of the week? I don't know how much longer it can go. When we talked about what he did on Sunday, we've seen what he's now done over the past 2 days. If it lasts the rest of the week, then yeah, he'll absolutely mitigate this score. I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think that he's the type of guy who is going to recognize the pieces that can be dropped that are cold for the new hot hitter. That's just not going to happen. And as that happens, I think Christian's going to pull away in a couple of categories here. Go ahead and give me 14-6 here. Give me
wow, over a double up.
Yeah. Give me, like I said, something similar to this. But yeah, that's my blowout of the week. That brings us to Mike Haber versus Henry Collins.
Well, this was actually a very, very tough matchup for Henry, especially because his first matchup was against Mike's brother, Josh, and it was a long matchup. So the 11-day matchup, you really got to see a lot of what his guys could do. And you saw that incredible start from Matt Chapman. Basically, everybody was contributing offensively. Kyle Tucker, of course. And then, he got to play someone that wasn't going to necessarily be as active when I talk about Matt Losey versus a Josh Haber, right? Like he's just not going to use as many ads. And that turned into a 10-10 tie. Now you got to see someone like Mike Haber that's very different than Matt Losey. And does anybody really manage day to day and play to the score as good as Mike Haber does? I don't think so. It's a very, very tough matchup for Henry. And not to mention that Mike has already started off pretty freaking hot. He's batting .314. He's got an over 400 on base percentage. Whereas, Henry's got a little bit of catching up to do, of course. Like it's so super early, even the 183 could go up 100 points. But it's a tough matchup just because it's Mike Haber and he's just got that experience. He's going to be kind of looking at what Henry is doing. Henry's going to be looking at what Mike is doing, and they're going to be assessing what each other's plan is. But I just think at the end of the day, Mike is going to know how to navigate to the win a little bit better than Henry, just based on experience. I realize the ERA is ugly at a big 6, but it's only 18 innings, so he's still under half of the minimum. He's got a long way to go. That ERA is going to go downward. And it's not like Henry's really pitching that well, nearly a 6, and he's over half to the minimum. So it's not going to be pretty. Unfortunately, I do think it's going to be over a double up. Give me 13-6.
I think it could be
favor of
worse.
Mike.
I think it could be worse. Just looking at what I see right here and knowing how Mike Haber plays and knowing that this is, you said it, this might be the worst matchup for Henry in this league right now. Like this might be the worst dude at the worst time.
Fine.
Because of what happened for the very first week and 6 days of that second matchup.
Yeah.
Because on Sunday he flips everything and it's a 10-9 win, and this is his get right match. Mike is going to get right here, and it's going to come at Henry's expense.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, not that Henry would necessarily know this about Mike, but if he did, he'd think, I'd much rather play Mike if he had just lost to Frank.
Yes.
Versus, like you said, turning around that into a win on Sunday, and now he's playing with all this momentum. Where if you listen to his show, he was a little bit flustered.
I would say despondent was the word. Despondent midweek sounded pretty good. Like he's ready to throw it in. He's thinking it's 2017 all over again.
Hey, which is so
Frank
unlike him.
closes that out. If Frank closes that out, I want to
14-5.
be Henry. I want to be Henry, right?
Yeah.
Like I want that opportunity to squash this bug. And you see the momentum suddenly swing in Mike Haber's favor. And I could see this being really ugly. I'll put some respect on Henry's guts here. Let's go 12-6 and just call it a double up. But I think it could be worse than that.
Okay. And I had 13-6, so I have a little bit worse actually. But I think he shoved both of us up, and he's like, look, I just won the week, because why not? It's the bigs.
It is. It is, in fact, the bigs. The final matchup this week that we are highlighting, Josh Haber versus Adam Lowenstein. What do you got?
Well, unfortunately for Josh, he could have pitched a lot better on Monday, and he was awful between having Logan Webb and having Dustin May and then having Vesia as well. It's like Adam had an awful start from David Peterson against Dustin May and still managed to get the win and get away with throwing the guy in Dodger Stadium. I mean, he dodged a bullet, Joe. And for that reason, I already feel like there's a lot of catch-up needing to be had from Josh. So he's the more experienced manager. So I do think he's going to cut it close. I'm going to go 11-10 in favor of Adam, but I could be dead wrong and Josh kills him, so could go either way. Right now, it's seeming like it could. I'm looking at the categories. There's nothing that's really unreachable anywhere, but I just think that ERA is going to be so ugly and so hard to overcome at this point. He's going to have to work so hard every single day that he can salvage, and he can do what he can based on his experience versus the man that hasn't been in the league since 2005. I got Josh cutting it close, but not close enough to get the win.
This is such a weird matchup. I'm looking at this, and it's one guy threw 2 baseball games with 7 earned runs, and another guy threw a little more than a baseball game with like 6 earned runs. And all that says to me is that there's a long way to go, and this doesn't necessarily need to look like this. We're probably not gonna see dudes throw into ERAs in the mid twos. We're probably not even gonna see them throw into the mid threes. But I think if either one of these guys can get their ERA under 4 by week's end, you win that category.
So I just wanted to say though, of the four of the managers that we picked to lose these matchups,
Mhm.
Brian Lebo,
Mm-hmm.
Adam Lowenstein.
I haven't predicted this matchup yet.
Okay, fair enough.
But continue. You chose Adam
I chose Adam to win.
to win. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. There's a whole lot to be done on the pitching side. The hitting side, Adam's been red hot for 2 weeks. Maybe this is the down week, right? Maybe it is. But the question I have is the down week worse than a Josh average week?
Yeah, that's the question.
And I think the answer it's going to be worse, but I think it's going to be plenty competitive. I agree with you that this is going to be close. I'll go ahead and pick Adam to win this 11-9.
Okay. So, all right, that kind of negates what I was about to say, but I mean, we both think it's going to be close, right?
Yes.
So,
Josh could definitely win this.
Yeah. Okay. So, for the sake of this discussion, Lebo, Adam, Henry, Matt Losi.
Okay.
Right. They're all super new managers that I'm pretty positive that they'll say to us in 14 or 15 weeks, I've learned so much more than even I thought I knew in the third week of 2023. You know, even a Brian Lebo, who's been with us since 2020, had the shortened season, now 2 full years. Like, you and I are still learning stuff every day.
Yeah.
So our eyes are always getting more open and realizing new things. So, you know, what is a close win from Adam, you know, in 2 years is he figures out a way to dump truck the guy, you know, by the weekend. Like, there's a lot of different ways that I can see things going the next time these guys match up, because everybody that's playing each other now will play each other again.
Yes. And that's the one thing that, especially in these 6 matchups that you have repeat, my goal is always to split those matchups. If I could split win-losses and not get blown out in my losses, I feel like I've won that 6. And then there's, you know, the rest. The other
You
10.
mean for 7 matchups? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
The
that's
ones that you play twice.
Yeah. Those 7. If I could split them, if I win the first time through, then anything I do on the second time is great. If I lose the first time through, I'm particularly targeting that week to get a W.
Mhm.
And I think that's a fairly good strategy for anybody to live by. It's a good way to make sure that you're balancing out your wins and losses. And listen, we all want more wins than losses, right? Because there's only one on each stat.
Right. And if you win by 1 every single week, you'll be 22 over 500 going to the playoffs.
Absolutely. Guys, this has been absolutely fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope we brought you everything that you want out of this. Benny, this has been fantastic. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure staying up with you, man. It has been a lot of fun. It's always great talking about the bigs with you. I can't wait till the next one.
Thank you guys so much for being here with us for the 3rd time in week 2's review. Go ahead and click subscribe, give us a 5-star review, share this with your friends. Honestly, just chill out and listen to us, because this is us. This is all this is for. It's our boys. Until next time, guys, it's been real. It's been fun. It's always real fun in the bigs. We'll see you next time.